The Rialto Theater in Tucson stood empty after the sound check. Jhony Cash wandered the dimly lit corridors alone, his footsteps echoing against the ornate walls of the historic venue. The man in black was tired, bone-tired. 3 months into a grueling tour across the heartland, and the spark was gone. Jhony found himself sitting in the back row of the empty theater, staring at the ghostly stage. The band had left hours ago. June was back at the hotel nursing a cold. It was just him now, alone with his thoughts and the weight of expectations pressing down on his shoulders. "Something's missing," he whispered to himself, his voice carrying in the empty space. The shows were selling out. The crowds were cheering, but Jhony felt hollow inside. The music had become mechanical, rehearsed, a far cry from the raw emotion that had once defined his sound. As he sat there contemplating the next night's performance, a soft melody drifted through the theater. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible. Jhony tilted his head, wondering if his mind was playing tricks on him. But no, there it was, a voice singing "Peace in the Valley" in a tone so pure it made the hairs on Jhony's arms stand up. Hey folks, if you're enjoying this story about Jhony Cash, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on my channel for more incredible stories about music legends. Jhony rose to his feet, drawn to the mysterious voice like a moth to flame. It wasn't coming from the stage or the wings, but somewhere deeper in the building. He followed the sound down a service corridor he'd never noticed before. The voice grew stronger as Jhony moved closer. Whoever was singing had soul, the kind that couldn't be taught or bought, the kind Jhony himself had been praised for throughout his career. At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar, light spilling out. The singing was coming from inside. Jhony paused, not wanting to interrupt and break the spell. The voice belonged to a man. That much was clear. A man singing with his whole heart about finding peace after a lifetime of troubles. Jhony recognized something in that voice. It wasn't just talent, it was experience. Hard-won wisdom and pain transformed into something beautiful. It was everything Jhony had been missing in his own performances lately. Taking a deep breath, Jhony pushed the door open wider. Inside, a man in gray coveralls was mopping the floor of what appeared to be a break room. His back was to Jhony, unaware of his famous audience as he sang to himself, the mop handle serving as an impromptu microphone. Jhony Cash stood transfixed, listening to the janitor sing. "Don't think I've ever heard Peace in the Valley sung quite like that," Jhony said, his deep voice startling the janitor. The mop clattered to the floor as the man spun around, eyes wide with recognition. "Mr. Cash, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know anyone was still here. Don't apologize for something that beautiful," Jhony replied, stepping into the room. "What's your name?" Ray Jefferson." The janitor was a tall black man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and hands that showed years of hard labor. He quickly picked up his mop, embarrassment evident on his face. "Well, Ray Jefferson, you've got quite a gift." Jhony extended his hand. Ray hesitated before shaking it. "Just passing the time while I work, Mr. Cash. No harm in it." Jhony pulled up a folding chair. "How long have you been singing, Ray?" "All my life, I suppose. Church choir as a boy. Had a gospel group for a while in my 20s. Ray shrugged, as if dismissing decades of devotion to music as nothing more than a hobby. "And now you're cleaning floors at the Rialto?" Ray's expression hardened slightly. "Honest work, Mr. Cash. Pays the bills." Jhony nodded slowly, studying the man before him. "Would you sing something else for me, Ray?" "Your choice." Ray looked at Jhony Cash with a mixture of disbelief and apprehension. "You want me to sing? For you?" Jhony nodded. "If you don't mind." Ray set the mop aside and wiped his hands on his coveralls. He cleared his throat, closed his eyes, and after a moment's hesitation, began to sing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot." The break room disappeared. The fluorescent lights, the linoleum floor, the vending machines, all of it faded away as Ray's voice filled the space. It was a voice weathered by life but not broken, powerful without being showy, authentic in a way that spoke directly to the soul. Jhony sat motionless, entranced. Ray's rendition transported him back to his childhood in Arkansas, to the small churches where he'd first heard gospel music that touched something deep inside him. When Ray finished, the silence that followed was reverent. "Mr. Jefferson," Jhony said finally, "how would you like to come to my show tomorrow night?" Ray's face broke into a cautious smile. "That's mighty kind of you, Mr. Cash. I'd be honored." "Not as a guest," Jhony clarified. "I want you to sing with me." The janitor's mouth fell open. "You're joking." "I never joke about music, Ray." Jhony stood up. "One song, on stage with me and the band. Think you can handle that?" If you're loving this story about Jhony Cash discovering hidden talent, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more amazing music legend stories. Ray Jefferson stared at Jhony Cash as if the man had lost his mind. "Mr. Cash, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just a janitor. I clean this place. I don't perform in it." Johnny's expression remained serious. "Tell me something, Ray. Do you believe music is a gift from God himself?" Ray answered without hesitation. "Then why bury that gift under a mop and bucket?" Jhony challenged. Ray's eyes darkened. "You think I chose this? I tried for years to make it singing. Traveled all over the South with my group, the Gospel Travelers. Recorded a few singles that went nowhere. Had a family to feed, Mr. Cash. Dreams don't put food on the table." Jhony nodded thoughtfully. "I was a door-to-door salesman once. Terrible at it. Couldn't convince anyone to buy anything." This drew a small smile from Ray. "Life takes unexpected turns," Jhony continued. "But I believe there's a reason I wandered into this theater tonight after everyone left. A reason I heard you singing." Ray hesitated. "One song?" "To start," Jhony replied cryptically. "Let's see what happens from there." Ray's laugh was nervous. "My wife won't believe this. Bring her tomorrow. Backstage pass. You'll both be my guests until showtime." Ray extended his hand. "If you're serious, Mr. Cash, then yes. I'd be honored to sing with you." Jhony shook Ray's hand, feeling more excitement than he had in months. "Call me Jhony, and be ready for your life to change, Ray Jefferson." The next morning, Jhony gathered his band at the Rialto for an unscheduled rehearsal. June Carter Cash sat in the front row, still fighting her cold but curious about her husband's sudden burst of energy. "Boys," Jhony announced, "we're making a change to tonight's show, adding a special guest." Marshall Grant raised an eyebrow. "Who's that, John?" "A man named Ray Jefferson. Has a voice that'll make you think the angels came down to earth." The band exchanged glances. They were used to Johnny's occasional impulsive decisions, but adding an unknown performer to a sold-out show was unusual even for him. "He's the janitor here," Jhony added, causing several musicians to stare in disbelief. Luther Perkins, Johnny's longtime guitarist, spoke up. "John, are you sure about this?" "Trust me," Jhony said firmly. "Wait until you hear him." At that moment, the stage door opened, and Ray entered with a woman by his side. His wife, Esther, was a dignified woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Ray himself looked like he hadn't slept, dressed in his Sunday best instead of his work clothes. "Ray," Jhony called out, "come meet the Tennessee Three." Introductions were made, and Jhony could see the band sizing Ray up, professional curiosity mingling with skepticism. "What are we singing, Mr. Cash?" Ray asked. "How about, 'Were you there when they crucified my Lord'? Traditional arrangement?" Ray nodded. "I know it well." Jhony turned to the band. "Let's keep it simple. Follow Ray's lead." As the first notes played, Ray closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The transformation was immediate. The tentative janitor disappeared, replaced by a commanding presence whose voice resonated through the theater. June's eyes widened. The band's skepticism melted away, and Jhony Cash smiled, knowing his instincts had been right all along. Hours before the show, Ray paced backstage, doubt gnawing at his confidence. "I can't do this, Esther," he muttered to his wife. "These people paid to see Jhony Cash, not some janitor who sings while mopping floors." Esther took his trembling hands in hers. "Raymond Jefferson, don't you dare back out now. This is what you've wanted your whole life. That was a young man's dream. I'm 53 years old, and God just dropped an opportunity in your lap that men half your age would kill for." Esther countered. "You think this is an accident? Jhony Cash hearing you sing?" Ray sighed, looking around at the busy backstage area where crew members hustled to prepare for the evening's performance. "What if they laugh? What if they boo? Then you'll still come home with me, and we'll still have our life together," Esther said softly. "But they won't boo. Not with that voice God gave you." A knock on the door interrupted them. It was Jhony Cash, already dressed in his trademark black. "How are you feeling, Ray?" Jhony asked. "Terrified," Ray admitted honestly. Jhony nodded. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps it real." He paused. "You know, I still get butterflies before every show." "You? Jhony Cash?" "Every single time." The day I don't feel that anymore is the day I should quit. Jhony placed a hand on Ray's shoulder. I've been performing for decades, and I never heard anyone sing Peace in the Valley the way you did last night. The audience will feel that too. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're enjoying this story about Jhony Cash's incredible discovery of hidden talent. The Rialto Theater was packed to capacity. The audience buzzed with anticipation, unaware that tonight's show would be different from any other on Jhony Cash's tour. Backstage, Ray Jefferson adjusted his borrowed bolo tie. Jhony had insisted on proper stage attire, and his road manager had scrambled to find something suitable. Now Ray stood in black pants, a crisp white shirt, and a black jacket that was slightly too large for his frame. 10 minutes, Mr. Jefferson, a stagehand informed him. Ray nodded, his throat suddenly dry. He could hear the crowd growing louder as showtime approached. Esther squeezed his hand. "Remember what Pastor Williams always says?" she whispered. "When you sing, you're not performing. You're testifying." Jhony appeared, adjusting his cuffs. "Change of plans, Ray. You're not going on in the middle of the show." Ray's heart sank. Had Jhony changed his mind? "Your opening," Jhony continued. "I'm going to introduce you, and then you'll have the stage to yourself for one song. No band. Just you and 3,000 people." Ray swallowed hard. "I thought we rehearsed with the band." "We did. But I want them to hear you the way I heard you. Just your voice. Nothing else." Jhony's eyes were intense. "Can you do that?" Before Ray could answer, the house lights dimmed and the crowd roared. Jhony gave Ray's shoulder a squeeze and stepped onto the stage to deafening applause. "Thank you!" Jhony's amplified voice filled the theater. "Thank you kindly." Before we start tonight's show, I want to share something special with you. Last night, after everyone had gone, I was sitting alone in this very theater, feeling tired, and wondering if the music still mattered. And then I heard a voice. The audience grew quiet as Jhony told the story. "So, tonight I'm going to introduce you to the man who reminded me why I started singing in the first place. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ray Jefferson." Ray stepped onto the bright stage, blinking at the sea of faces before him. The spotlight felt hot, the silence deafening. For a terrible moment his mind went blank. Then, from the side of the stage, he saw Esther. She nodded encouragingly, mouthing the words, "Just testify." Ray closed his eyes and let the first note of "Were you there when they crucified my Lord?" rise from deep within him. His voice, tentative at first, gathered strength with each phrase. By the time he reached the chorus, he was singing with the full power and emotion that had captured Jhony's attention the night before. The audience sat spellbound. In the front row, Jhony Cash wiped away a tear. At the back of the theater, the venue manager, who had never bothered to learn the janitor's name, stood with his mouth agape. When Ray hit the final verse, his voice soaring to the rafters of the old theater, something remarkable happened. People began to stand, first a few, then dozens. Then the entire audience rose to their feet in spontaneous recognition of something authentic and powerful in his performance. As the last note faded, there was a beat of silence, and then thunderous applause erupted. Ray opened his eyes to see 3,000 people on their feet, clapping and cheering for the janitor they'd never heard of before tonight. Jhony Cash returned to the stage, clapping as enthusiastically as anyone in the audience. He embraced Ray, who stood in shock at the response. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jhony announced, "Ray Jefferson. He'll be back later in the show, I promise you that." As Ray walked off stage, legs shaking, Esther rushed to embrace him. Over her shoulder, Ray could see members of Jhony's band nodding with newfound respect. The road manager was already on his phone talking excitedly. "What just happened?" Ray whispered to his wife. "God happened," Esther replied simply. After the show, Jhony's dressing room was crowded with the band, road crew, and venue staff, all buzzing about the night's unexpected highlight. Ray and Esther sat quietly in the corner, still processing the evening's events. When the room finally cleared, Jhony closed the door and sat across from Ray. "3 encores," Jhony said with a smile. "Don't think that's ever happened at a Tucson show before?" Ray shook his head in disbelief. "Mr. Cash, Jhony, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Jhony replied, suddenly serious, "because I'm about to complicate your life considerably." He leaned forward. "Ray, I want you to join the tour." Ray stared at him. "Join the what?" "The tour. Not just for one night, for all of it? 27 cities over the next 2 months?" Esther gasped softly. "As what?" Ray asked, confusion evident in his voice. As featured vocalist, you open the show solo, then join us for 3 or 4 songs during the main set. We'd pay you, of course. Standard rate for featured performers. Jhony named a figure that made Ray's eyes widen. But my job here at the Rialto, will it still be here in 2 months if you want it back? Jhony asked. Or is this the moment you've been waiting for your whole life? Ray looked at Esther, whose eyes shone with a mixture of excitement and concern. It won't be easy, Jhony continued. Tour life is grueling. Long bus rides, different hotel every night, away from home and family. He glanced at Esther. But your voice deserves to be heard, Ray. Not just by me and the cleaning staff at the Rialto, but by people across this country. Ray took Esther's hand. I need to talk to my wife about this, Jhony nodded. Of course, but I need an answer by morning. Bus leaves at noon. As Jhony left them alone, Ray and Esther sat in stunned silence, facing the biggest decision of their lives. If you're enjoying this story about Jhony Cash and the janitor with the golden voice, hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories about music legends. Dawn broke over Tucson, finding Ray and Esther Jefferson still deep in conversation in their modest home. They had been up all night weighing a decision that would change everything. What about your medication? Esther worried. Your blood pressure. I'll take it with me, Ray assured her. Jhony said there's a doctor that travels with them sometimes. Esther sighed. 2 months is a long time to be apart, Raymond. Ray nodded, the reality of it settling heavily on his shoulders. I know, baby, but Jhony Cash heard me sing. After 30 years of nothing, this happens? He took her hands in his. If I don't go, I'll wonder what if for the rest of my life. Tears welled in Esther's eyes. I'm scared for you. But I'm more scared you'll regret not taking this chance. The phone rang, startling them both. It was Jhony. Ray, Johnny's voice came through the receiver. I hope I'm not calling too early. No, sir, we've been up all night talking. And? There was a pause on the line. Ray looked at Esther, who nodded slowly. I'm in, he said firmly. If you really want me, I'm in. Excellent. Johnny's relief was evident. Bus leaves from the hotel at noon. Pack light. We can get you what you need on the road. After hanging up, Ray sat down heavily, the magnitude of his decision sinking in. I need to call Mr. Diaz and quit my job. After 15 years, Esther murmured. After 15 years, Ray echoed. Then he smiled. No more mops. No more waxing floors in the middle of the night. No more steady paycheck either, Esther reminded him. No more health insurance. Ray's smile faded slightly. Are you having second thoughts? Esther shook her head. No. God opened this door, Raymond. You walk through it with your head held high. She squared her shoulders. I'll be fine here. The kids can help if I need anything. Ray embraced his wife, wondering if he was being selfish, wondering if this was madness for a man his age, and wondering what awaited him on the road with Jhony Cash. The tour bus rumbled down the highway, eating up miles between Tucson and Phoenix, the next stop on Jhony Cash's tour. Ray sat by a window, watching the desert landscape roll by, still trying to process the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. First time on a tour bus? Asked Luther Perkins, settling into the seat across from him. Ray nodded. First time on any kind of tour, period. Well, get used to this view, Luther gestured to the highway. You'll see a lot of it. Jhony made his way down the aisle and sat beside Ray. How are you holding up? Still feels like a dream, Ray admitted. Left my mop behind and suddenly I'm on Jhony Cash's tour bus. Jhony chuckled. Life has a way of surprising us. He pulled out a notepad. I've been thinking about the set list. Your voice would blend perfectly on Daddy Sang Bass. You know that one? Know it? I wore out that record playing it so much. Jhony smiled. Good. And I'm thinking we should work up a gospel medley. Let you really showcase what you can do. As the two men discussed music, the rest of the band watched with interest. Most had been with Jhony for years, through highs and lows, through hits and flops. They'd seen his creative whims come and go. But this was different. Jhony was energized in a way they hadn't seen in months. June Carter Cash, sitting at the front of the bus with her needlework, observed the change in her husband with quiet satisfaction. When the time was right, she made her way back to where Ray sat. Thank you, she said simply. Ray looked up, confused. For what, Miss June? For bringing the joy back, she replied. Jhony was going through the motions before he heard you sing. Now look at him. She nodded toward Jhony, who was enthusiastically demonstrating a harmony part to Marshall Grant. "I should be thanking him," Ray said. "He's changed my life." June smiled knowingly. "Perhaps you've changed each other's." The Phoenix crowd was skeptical at first. They had come to see Jhony Cash, not an unknown opener. But by the end of Ray's first song, they were won over, just as the Tucson audience had been. Backstage after the show, local reporters clamored for the story. Who was this Ray Jefferson, and where had Jhony Cash found him? "In the janitor's closet," Jhony told them with a grin, his arm around Ray's shoulders. "Cleaning floors by day, but his soul shines at night." The headline in the next day's Arizona Republic read, "Cash strikes gold with singing janitor." As the tour continued, word began to spread. In Albuquerque, fans arrived early specifically to see Ray's opening set. In Denver, someone brought a handmade sign that read, "Ray Jefferson Fan Club." For Ray, it was dizzying. At each stop, there were more interviews, more autographs to sign. Johnny's road manager arranged for new stage clothes, and the record company executives started showing up at shows, watching Ray with calculating eyes. But with the growing attention came growing pains. Ray was unused to the grueling schedule, different city every night, sleeping on the bus, eating whenever there was time. His blood pressure medication made him dizzy sometimes, and the late nights took their toll. After a particularly exhausting 3-show run, Ray found himself sitting alone in a hotel lobby in Salt Lake City at 3 a.m., homesick and overwhelmed. Jhony, on his way back from the vending machine, spotted him. "Can't sleep?" Ray looked up wearily. "Talked to Esther earlier. Her car broke down. Costs more to fix than it's worth." Jhony sat down. "Need to send money home?" "Already did. But it's not just that." Ray rubbed his eyes. "I'm not young like the rest of you. This pace is... it's hard." Jhony laughed. "Young? Ray, I'm older than you. But you've been doing this for decades. I've been mopping floors. Big difference." Jhony nodded thoughtfully. "Tell you what, I'll have the manager build in more rest days, and we'll get you checked by the tour doctor tomorrow." Don't forget to subscribe if you're enjoying this story about Jhony Cash and the incredible janitor with the golden voice. In Chicago, 3 weeks into the tour, the record executives made their move. Ray was summoned to Johnny's suite after the show to find 3 men in expensive suits waiting. "Mr. Jefferson," said the oldest of the 3, extending his hand, "I'm Walter Ridgway, A&R director at Columbia Records. We've been following your performances with great interest." Ray shook his hand cautiously, glancing at Jhony, who stood by the window smoking a cigarette. "What we're seeing is something special," Ridgway continued. "The audience connection, the authenticity of your voice. It's not something you can manufacture." "Thank you," Ray said simply. "We'd like to offer you a recording contract. Solo artist. 3 albums with an option for 2 more depending on sales." Ray's jaw dropped. "A recording contract? For me?" "The timing is perfect," said one of the other executives. "The success of the Cash Tour has created buzz. We want to capitalize on that with a quick single release, followed by an album before the year's end." Ray looked again at Jhony, who remained unreadable. "What kind of music would you want me to record?" Ray asked. "We're thinking a mix of gospel and country soul. Nothing too churchy. We want mainstream appeal." Ray frowned slightly. "Gospel is what I sing, Mr. Ridgway." Of course, but with broader appeal. More crossover potential." Ridgway slid a contract across the coffee table. "Standard terms. We'd need you in the studio as soon as this tour wraps." Ray picked up the contract, overwhelmed by the legal language and the implications. "A recording artist. At 53, after a lifetime of rejection and disappointment. I'd need my lawyer to look at this," he said slowly. Ridgway's smile tightened. "Of course. But we'd need an answer soon. Strike while the iron is hot, as they say." After the executives left, Ray turned to Jhony. "Did you know about this?" Jhony finally moved from the window. "They approached me yesterday. Wanted my blessing." He sat across from Ray. "It's a standard newcomer contract. Not great terms, but not terrible either. What would you do?" Jhony took a long drag of his cigarette. "Hard to say. 15 years ago, I would have jumped at it." He paused. "But I've learned a few things since then about what really matters." The tour rolled on to Detroit, but Ray was distracted. The record contract weighed heavily on his mind, as did his growing concern for Esther back home. Their daily phone calls had revealed her struggling with the house repairs and her own health issues. During soundcheck at the Michigan Palace, Ray's voice cracked on a high note he'd hit effortlessly every night before. "You okay?" Jhony asked, concern evident in his voice. "Just tired," Ray assured him. "Need to rest before the show." But in his dressing room, Ray found himself short of breath, his chest tight. The tour doctor was summoned and quickly called for an ambulance. Hours later, Jhony and June sat in the hospital waiting room. The doctor emerged with sobering news. "Mr. Jefferson is stable, but he's had a minor heart attack. Nothing too severe, but a warning sign we can't ignore." Johnny's face fell. "Will he recover?" "With proper rest and medication, yes, but I cannot in good conscience clear him to continue this tour schedule. The stress, the late nights, the irregular meals, it's too much for his system right now." June squeezed Johnny's hand as the implications sank in. When they were allowed to see Ray, they found him looking small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, an IV in his arm and monitors beeping steadily. "Don't you worry about a thing," Jhony said, forcing cheerfulness into his voice. "The important thing is you get better." Ray's eyes were filled with despair. "I've let you down, Jhony. All these people coming to see the show." "Nonsense," June interjected firmly. "Your health comes first?" Ray turned away, a tear sliding down his cheek. "Just when everything was finally happening for me. The contract, the tour, now this." Jhony exchanged glances with June. "Ray, listen to me. This isn't the end of anything. It's just a detour." But as they left the hospital, Jhony knew difficult decisions lay ahead. For Ray, for the tour, and for everyone involved in the unexpected partnership that had begun in a janitor's closet just 1 month earlier. Jhony Cash paced his hotel room all night, turning over possibilities in his mind. By dawn, he had made his decision. He called an emergency meeting of the tour staff and band. "We're canceling the next 3 shows," he announced, to gasps and protests. "Jhony, the venues are sold out," his manager objected. "The financial penalties?" "Will be covered personally by me if necessary," Jhony interrupted. "Ray Jefferson needs time to recover, and we need time to rethink this tour." Luther Perkins spoke up. "John, we all like Ray, but canceling shows for someone who's only been with us a month, this isn't just about Ray," Jhony replied firmly. "It's about what he represents, the raw, authentic spirit of music that we're in danger of losing in this business." He looked around the room. "When was the last time any of us sang because we had to, not because we were paid to?" The room fell silent. 3 days, Jhony continued. "That's all I'm asking." Then we resume in Cleveland with a new approach. Next, Jhony called Walter Ridgway at Columbia Records. "The deal you offered Ray Jefferson needs to change," he said without preamble. "Cash, we've already drawn up the paperwork. He's in the hospital, Walter. Heart attack." A pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. Will he recover?" "Yes, but he can't maintain this tour schedule, and he can't record 3 albums in 2 years. Then I'm afraid we'll have to reconsider our offer. The timing is crucial for—" "Listen carefully," Jhony interrupted. "You're going to adjust the terms. 1 album, recorded at Ray's pace with proper medical supervision, and you're going to improve the royalty percentage." "Or what?" Ridgway challenged. "Or I tell Billboard magazine how Columbia is trying to exploit a 53-year-old janitor who just had a heart attack, right after I hold a press conference announcing my own future plans are uncertain." The implicit threat was clear. Jhony Cash was Columbia's biggest country music asset. "You're playing hardball, Cash. I learned from the best, Walter." After securing a tentative agreement from the record executive, Jhony headed to the hospital with a new proposal for Ray. If you're enjoying this story about Jhony Cash and the singing janitor, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more incredible stories about music legends. Ray was sitting up in his hospital bed when Jhony arrived, looking better but still weak. "The doctor says I can leave tomorrow, but I can't perform for at least 2 weeks," Ray said, disappointment evident in his voice. "That works out perfectly," Jhony replied, pulling up a chair, "because I've been doing some thinking, and I want to propose something new." Jhony laid out his vision. The tour would be restructured, with fewer shows and more rest days. Instead of continuing as planned, they would add special performances at churches and community centers in addition to the major venues. These would be gospel-focused shows where Ray could truly shine in his element. "We'll call it the Jhony Cash Gospel Revival Tour," Jhony explained, "with special guest Ray Jefferson. Equal billing. Ray stared at him in disbelief. Equal billing? Jhony, you can't be serious. Dead serious. And there's more. Jhony told him about the renegotiated record deal. Better terms, less pressure, with recording to begin only when Ray was fully recovered. Why would you do all this for me? Ray asked, overwhelmed. Changing your whole tour, threatening your record label. You barely know me. Jhony was quiet for a moment. When I was young, before the fame, there was a radio station manager in Memphis who gave me a chance when no one else would. He saw something in me that others missed. Then he met Ray's gaze. Sometimes in life, we're called to be that person for someone else. Ray's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll call Esther and tell her to pack a bag, Jhony replied with a smile. Because I'm flying her out to join us for the rest of the tour. You need your wife, and frankly, she sounds like someone June would enjoy having around. As the implications of this new arrangement sank in, Ray began to laugh, a deep, joyful sound that belied his medical condition. Jhony Cash, he said, shaking his head in wonder, you are nothing like I imagined. I'll take that as a compliment, Jhony replied. Now rest up. We've got churches to rock and souls to stir. 2 weeks later, St. Mark's Baptist Church in Cleveland was filled beyond capacity. People stood in the aisles and crowded the vestibule, straining to see the stage where Jhony Cash and Ray Jefferson stood side by side, black suits gleaming under the simple lights. This was the fourth stop on the Restructured tour, a parallel track to the regular concert venues. For every major auditorium show, there was now a church or community center performance that focused on gospel and spiritual music. Word had spread quickly about this new direction. The story of the janitor with the golden voice who suffered a heart attack, only to rise again with Jhony Cash's support, had captured the public's imagination. What began as a novelty had evolved into something deeper, a musical partnership that transcended entertainment. Esther sat in the front row beside June Carter Cash, the two women having formed a fast friendship. Esther beamed with pride as Ray's voice filled the church, stronger than ever after his recovery. When they performed Peace in the Valley, the very song Jhony had first heard Ray singing, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Backstage after the show, a young reporter from Rolling Stone approached Jhony. Mr. Cash, critics are calling this the most authentic music you've made in years. Was that the intention when you restructured the tour? Jhony considered the question. Intention? No, this wasn't calculated. Sometimes music tells you where it needs to go, not the other way around. Ray joined them, his arm around Esther. The reporter turned to him. Mr. Jefferson, how does it feel to go from cleaning floors to sharing the stage with Jhony Cash in just over a month? Ray smiled. Like a dream I stopped believing in long ago. But more importantly, it feels right. Like this is what I was meant to do all along. As the reporter scribbled notes, a church deacon approached with an elderly woman leaning on his arm. Excuse me, the deacon said. My mother wanted to meet you both. She says your singing reminded her of the revival meeting she attended as a girl in Mississippi. The old woman's eyes shone with tears. You two brought something back tonight, something that's been missing from music for too long. Jhony and Ray exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. This was becoming something larger than either had anticipated. The Columbia Records studio in Nashville hummed with activity. Engineers checked levels while session musicians warmed up. In the center of it all stood Ray Jefferson, nervously adjusting his tie. Relax, Jhony said, clasping Ray's shoulder. Just sing like you do every night. Studio's different, Ray muttered. No audience energy to feed off, Jhony nodded. That's why I brought reinforcements. The control room door opened, and in walked Esther, June, and to Ray's shock, a dozen members from his old church choir back in Tucson. Surprised? Esther asked, embracing her husband. How did you? Jhony flew them in this morning, she explained. Said you needed your people around you for your first recording session. Walter Ridgway entered, surveying the crowded studio with displeasure. This isn't what we discussed, Cash. We need a controlled environment for clean audio. What we need, Jhony countered, is for Ray to sound like Ray. And Ray sounds best when he's surrounded by community. The producer, a veteran of countless sessions, sided with Jhony. We can make the technical adjustments. Let's try it their way first. What emerged over the next 8 hours was unlike anything Columbia had recorded before. Ray's voice, backed by his church friends and Jhony's band, created a sound that blended gospel tradition with country soul. When they tackled Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, the control room fell silent in reverence. As the session wound down, Jhony pulled Ray aside. "What do you think? Studio still scary?" Ray shook his head, emotion evident in his eyes. "Today I sang in a major recording studio with my wife, my church family, and Jhony Cash backing me up. If this is a dream, I don't ever want to wake up." Jhony smiled. "No dream, Ray. This is just the beginning." 6 months later, the Rialto Theater in Tucson was once again filled to capacity. But this time, Ray Jefferson wasn't pushing a mop in the back corridors. He was on the marquee. Jhony Cash and Ray Jefferson, the Gospel Revival Tour. Backstage, Ray adjusted his custom-made black suit, a gift from Jhony after Ray's album Janitor's Gospel went gold. The single, Peace in the Valley, had climbed both the country and gospel charts, introducing Ray's voice to a national audience. "Nervous?" Jhony asked, tuning his guitar. "Coming back here?" "A little," Ray admitted. "Last time I was in this building, I was waxing the floors." Jhony grinned. "Well, I checked with management. Your old job is still open if this music thing doesn't work out." Ray laughed, the tension breaking. "I'll keep that in mind." June and Esther joined them. Both women dressed elegantly for the special occasion. Esther's health had improved dramatically since joining the tour, and June often remarked that having another tour wife had been a blessing. 5 minutes, the stage manager called. Jhony gathered everyone in a circle, a pre-show ritual they had developed over months of performing together. "Let's remember why we're here," he said solemnly. "Not for applause or record sales, but because music matters. Because authentic voices matter." Ray nodded, thinking of the journey that had brought him to this moment. From obscurity to partnership with a legend, from janitor to recording artist. Against all odds, at an age when most men settled into retirement, he had found his voice and an audience eager to hear it. "Ready?" Jhony asked. "Ready," Ray confirmed. As they took the stage to thunderous applause, Ray caught sight of Mr. Diaz, the venue manager who had employed him for 15 years without ever learning his name. The man's jaw had dropped in recognition. Ray smiled and stepped up to the microphone. "Good evening, Tucson," he said, his voice strong and confident. "My name is Ray Jefferson. The last time I was in this building, I was cleaning up after the show. Tonight, I'm here to make a joyful noise." The crowd roared its approval as Jhony struck the first chord. And in that moment, two men from different worlds but kindred spirits in music began to sing, their voices blending in perfect harmony, united by the authentic sound that had brought them together on that fateful night when Jhony Cash heard the janitor sing. If you enjoyed this story about how Jhony Cash discovered hidden talent and changed lives through music, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more inspiring stories about music legends. Your support helps me continue creating content like this. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story.